One of the most successful animated series on Nickelodeon was Avatar: The Last Airbender. The show's plot is just so awesome and creative. For those of you who don't know that much about it, here goes. It takes place in between four nations: water, earth, fire, and air. Each nation can bend their element, meaning they can have control over it. Then there's the Avatar, who can control all four elements. The Avatar has to maintain balance in the world. The main character, Aang, who's the current Avatar, runs away as a child and gets himself trapped in ice underwater. He's under there for 100 years, and in that time the Fire Nation took over and started a war. Katara and Sokka, who are brother and sister, find Aang in the ice and get him out. Aang hasn't mastered any of the elements besides his original element, which was air. So Aang, Sokka, and Katara journey to the North Pole so that Aang can learn his first element of water. Also, Katara, who is a waterbender, wants to master it alongside Aang. On their journey, they find out that there's a comet coming, which only comes every 100 years. It gives the firebenders insane power, so Aang has to stop them before the comet comes. Otherwise, the Fire Nation would use the power to end the war. It's a very complex plot, which makes it not only appeal to kids, but adults too. The show is actually rated number 12 on the top rated TV series of all time on imdb.com. So there's obviously a lot of adult support. The show is split up into 3 seasons, or books as they call it. Each one is based on Aang learning an element. He's already mastered air, so book 1 is water, book 2 is earth, and book 3 is fire. Unlike most kid series, where the episodes can stand alone, Avatar is one full story, and the best way to watch it is from the beginning to the end. One of the great parts of the show is how it perfectly blends comedy and action. The show is hilarious, but there are also some pretty badass action scenes. Now let's talk about the characters. Every single character has an outstanding backstory, and each character is developed so well. And that's one of the great things about the show. Obviously, Aang is the Avatar, and he's really just a goofy kid who enjoys life to the fullest. He's incredibly kind-hearted and is selfless. But when he gets mad, shit goes down. The first time we see him get mad, he had just found out that all of the airbenders were wiped out while he was in the iceberg. He goes into what's called the Avatar state, where he's much more powerful and can't really control himself. Aang is also in love with Katara, and because of that he struggles with mastering the Avatar state, because to master it, you have to let go of your loved ones.
Why would I let go of Katara? I love her.
Aang was raised by monks, so he's very against violence, and often gives people second chances. Sokka. He's the comic relief of the show. He's sarcastic and he's hysterical. But he also has a side where he wants to prove himself as a warrior, to be accepted by his father, who's a great warrior. He's the only one in the group who can't bend, so he makes up for that by using a sword and a boomerang. He's also the brains of the group, and comes up with most of the plans. Katara is the motherly one. She takes care of everyone in the group. She's extremely strong-willed and believes in doing the right thing. She's also an incredible waterbender, and trains Aang for the first element. She's a very kind person, but just like Aang, if you piss her off, shit goes down.
She lied to you. She was protecting the last waterbender.
What? Who?
Me!
Another character I haven't mentioned is Toph. She's a blind earthbender who can see with her feet by feeling the vibrations in the earth. She's pretty much the best earthbender in the world, and is pretty much unstoppable. She becomes Aang's earthbending teacher. And let's not forget about Appa and Momo. Appa is a flying bison and is Aang's avatar creature. They travel on Appa everywhere they go. And Momo they found when they went to the Southern Air Temple and adopted him as their pet. Now, my favorite character of the whole series is Prince Zuko. He's probably the most developed character of the series. He's the prince of the Fire Nation, and he's constantly confused on what to do, and figuring out what's right from wrong. Zuko spoke out a term in a war meeting, and his punishment was to fight his father, but he refused, so his father burned him and left a scar on his face. His father then banished him for being weak by not fighting back, and was told the only way he could restore his honor was to capture the Avatar. So in the first book and part of the second book, He chased the gang all around trying to capture Aang. He later realizes that he was wrong and ends up training Aang to firebend. He went looking for the Avatar with his uncle Iroh, who is a tea-crazed old man. But he's also incredibly wise and gives amazing advice.
You must never give in to despair. Allow yourself to slip down that road and you surrender to your lowest instincts.
Back in the day, he was a great general, until he lost a huge battle in Ba Sing Se. He also lost his son in that battle, so he and Zuko have a sort of father and son relationship, since Zuko's father banished him and hates him, and Iroh's son is dead. They fill the void for each other, which leads to a great relationship. In Book 2, we're introduced to Azula, who's Zuko's sister, and her two friends, Mai and Ty Lee. Azula is a crazy, power-craving lunatic who abuses her power, and she's just really an awful person. Mai is extremely dull and has no emotion. Ty Lee is full of spirit and is always happy. It's extremely entertaining to have all three of them together because they're so different. Another character is the Fire Lord named Ozai. One thing cool about him is that they don't show his face in books 1 or 2. It's not until book 3 that we get to see him. And the person that does his voice is Mark Hamill, who I'm a pretty big fan of for doing Star Wars and playing the Joker. Throughout the series, there's so many incredible, creative, and awesome ideas. In book 2, they found out that there was going to be a solar eclipse, which is where the moon covers the sun. The firebenders draw all their power from the sun, so when it's covered, they can't bend. So the gang invade the Fire Nation during this eclipse in book 3. In another episode called Puppet Master, they meet a creepy old lady. The episode has a lot of properties that a horror film would have, and is honestly kind of scary. You later find out that she is a waterbender and created a way to control people by bending their blood inside them. It's impossible to escape it once she has you in it, and she can make you do whatever she wants. She calls the technique blood bending.
Congratulations, Katara. You're a bloodbender.
One thing that I like about the series is how it portrays women as capable and strong individuals. You have Katara, who is extremely strong-willed and is a really powerful bender. They also have the Kyoshi warriors, who defend the city against Zuko in book 1. And of course, there are Azula, Mai, and Ty Lee, who are extremely menacing, and in other stories, women are weak and incompetent, and are referred to as a damsel in distress. But here they don't have that. Women are often more powerful than men. Just look at Toph, for example. She's the best earthbender there is, and she's a woman. There are so many awesome battles throughout the series. The first big battle is at the North Pole. They were traveling there for most of book 1, so they could find a waterbending master for Aang and Katara. The Fire Nation finds out where they are, and have an invasion force take over. General Zhao of the Fire Nation leads the battle. In the North Pole, there are the Ocean and Moon Spirit. They keep the balance for the waterbenders, because the Ocean and Moon give them their bending. Zhao goes in and kills the Moon Spirit, and everything goes gray, and they can't waterbend anymore. This leads to one of the most awesome parts of the whole series.
It's over.
No, it's not over.
I've got to say that the score from this scene is one of the most epic scores I've ever heard. And a score like that coming from a kids' TV series is pretty impressive. We find out later that the princess of the tribe, Yue, is part of the Moon Spirit in her, and she sacrifices her life to save the Moon Spirit. In Book 2, there are a series of 9 episodes focused on Ba Sing Se, which is the only safe place from the Fire Nation. It's a city with outstanding defenses. It's one of the highlights of the series in my opinion. The gang are going there because they want to tell the Earth King about the eclipse so they can win the war. Also, Appa was stolen and taken to the city, so they want to find him too. The series of episodes brings back a couple of characters that we saw earlier in the series. This includes Jet, who is obsessed with getting revenge from the Fire Nation for killing his parents. We also see Suki. She's a Kyoshi warrior that we met in Book 1. We also follow Zuko and Iroh, who travel to Ba Sing Se to start a new life. Eventually we find out that the city isn't everything that it's supposed to be. The Earth King, who has been locked in his palace his whole life, has no idea about the war because Longfeng, who is the king's right-hand man, is keeping it a secret from him. He thinks that if people talk about the war, it will disrupt the balance of the city. He brainwashes people, including Jet, to make them forget about the war. And he also brainwashes women who work for him and make them super creepy. And he also has Dai Li agents who are known for stealth and can complete pretty much any mission Long Feng wants them to. As the series of episodes goes on, it builds up more and more until there is finally an invasion from the inside of the city by Azula, Mei, and Ty Lee. One scene that was very sad was Jet's death.
Don't worry, Katara. I'll be fine.
He's lying.
The series of episodes leads to the Season 2 finale called Crossroads of Destiny. All of the episodes in the Ba Sing Se series, Zuko starts to become a better person, and starts to forget about the Avatar until Azula forces him to choose sides. He either chooses his uncle's side, who helps the Avatar escape, or he joins Azula to fight the Avatar. Unfortunately, he decides to join Azula. He's welcomed back to the Fire Nation by his father, which is everything that he wanted. But while he's back home, he realizes that what he did was wrong, and during the eclipse, he faces his father to speak his mind.
Get out of my sight right now if you know what's good for you.
That's another thing. I'm not taking orders from you anymore.
He's ashamed that he turned on his uncle, who was always there for him, and regrets it for all of Book 3 until he finally confronts him. And that in itself is a great scene.
How can you forgive me so easily?
I was never angry with you.
There are many parts throughout the series that are ridiculous and weird. There was one episode where Sokka drinks cactus juice and gets high.
Giant mushroom.
Maybe it's friendly! Friendly mushroom!
Mushy giant friend.
There was one time that they go to see a play about themselves and their journey. It deliberately parodies itself and is hilarious.
It's time we had a talk about your hair. It's gone too far.
But the weirdest part of the whole series is when Aang can't sleep because he's too nervous about the invasion that is in a couple days. He starts to have visions and nightmares that just get weirder and weirder as the episode progresses.
Chakras, chakras. Everybody loves chakras. Chakras, chakras. Chakras and it tastes good. Yum.
What the hell? The whole concept of the Avatar is just so creative. There's a cycle of the elements. It goes water, earth, fire, and air. The Avatar is reincarnated and goes through the cycle of elements, and it switches off from being male and female. The Avatar state is also a really cool concept. When the Avatar goes into the state, they have the power of all their past lives. One of my favorite episodes is called The Avatar and the Fire Lord. Here we see Roku's past, who was the Avatar before Aang. We find out that he was best friends with Sozin, who was the Fire Lord that started the war. Obviously, this is Zuko's great-grandfather because Zuko is the prince. But we also find out that his other great-grandfather on his mother's side was Avatar Roku. This is one of the key factors that made him want to help Aang. The series finale was a 4-part episode that focused on the final battle. Sozin's comet is coming to give the Firebender strength, and Aang is ready to face the Fire Lord. This is what the entire series has been leading up to, and let me tell you, it does not disappoint. There are 3 battles going on at once. Aang versus the Fire Lord, Azula versus Zuko and Katara, and Toph, Sokka, and Suki stopping the Fire Nation ships that are going to burn the remains of Ba Sing Se to the ground. In the first 2 episodes, Azula goes insane because she's so paranoid about trusting people ever since Mei and Ty Lee turned on her, the episode called The Boiling Rock, where they help Zuko and Sokka escape.
Trust is for fools. Fear is the only reliable way.
The fight between Aang and the Fire Lord is just so awesome, but the problem that Aang is facing is that he doesn't want to kill anybody. He had multiple opportunities to kill the Fire Lord during the fight, but did not strike. He then finds another way to stop him without killing him. He takes away his bending, which is one of those awesome and creative ideas that the writers just keep throwing up. The fight between Azula and Zuko is such a spectacle to watch. It's extremely well animated and looks so cool. When Azula takes a cheap shot at Katara, Zuko saves her by jumping in front of the lightning. Then we see Katara and Azula fight it out, and that's when Azula goes freaking nuts. The fight up in the sky with Sokka, Toph, and Suki is very suspenseful.
I don't think Boomerang is coming back, Toph. It looks like this is the end.
The finale dishes out so many awesome spectacles, and has a feel-good ending. The only complaint that I have was one string that was not tied up. This was about Zuko's mother. His mother gave her life so Zuko could live, but there was some question as to if she was still alive or not.
For her treason, she was banished.
though she's alive.
Perhaps.
At the end of the finale, Zuko goes down to his father's jail cell, where he asks him where his mother is. But then, that's it. They never explain it. I'm aware that there are some comics that elaborate on this, but I've not read them, and I just wish they could have done it in the series. But other than that, I'm very happy with the ending, which is often the hardest part of making a movie or TV series, and they nailed it here. The show is still very popular, even 6 years after it ended. In my opinion, it's the best show that Nickelodeon ever dished out, and will probably stay that way for a long time. With the success of the series, there have been a couple adaptations of it, including a god-awful movie by M. Night Shyamalan. It was based on book 1, and it was a disgrace to the amazing series. Then there was the reboot series called Legend of Korra, which is actually very good. It's not as good as the original, but that's the tough act to follow, and they did a great job on it. Avatar will always be one of my favorite shows, and I've given you my thoughts and opinions on the series to explain why I like this show so much. So thank you for watching.